Hello everyone. Today's talk is titled, Your Classroom Was Never Outside. And what that really means is that man is open to the concept of learning in this life. And so as you understand there's learning, you realize there are different spaces that you're receiving life. And simply these then in a creative manner become how you're approaching life. So first you must receive something to then have something to even do or to show or to express. And so this is how our minds think at first. However, in our more deeper contemplation of what is there in our presence, we find that whatever is there is present among all things. Because our question is not, for now, non-existence. That is not real for us. Right now, all that is real for us is existence. So we are not trying to say, oh, I exist in imagination, in imaginary planes, but to see that it is your experience that is directing you into what is actually the truth in that moment. Because each moment is like a different construction, each moment is like a new talk. And so each talk is encompassing everything that it can receive. So you will see that even though you have been going to school and going to external classrooms, all the lessons, all the accumulation of all teachings has been in how aware you were of the first classroom, your moment of existence. The new moment is where you are learning more than all that you know, because you're looking beyond everything you have acknowledged. People go into certain stages in life where they realize their ability, but they kind of give in to their lesser ability. It's that as if like that man is a great singer, but for some reason he loves his job at the dry cleaners, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a person who knows you have potential and your environment is becoming agitated, you need to move out of that environment, guys. Your day and simply the communications you go through with people and stuff, it's just like life and death. What that means is that in some moment, suddenly it's as if your agreement is a certain creation of its own. In that moment, and suddenly you leave that moment and it's as if there was nothing wrong. It's as if that moment where you perhaps lied to someone because you didn't like them. Then when you were around someone else, you were totally a good person. It's as if like thing bothered you until the imagery of that reality which you did not want to confront showed itself. So in life we're constantly thrown in dynamics where we're questioning what is moving. And so at some point in that questioning process, the mystic's eyes have met with the absolute conception that none of these concepts could be it. So when I give you options, you can either accept the options, you can just say these are the only options, or you, based on your curiosity and excitement and your intention, approach it in a way where they're like, what else is there? How was the question made? And so an engineer, when he begins looking at the design of questions, he is always becoming and moving towards being the answer. It's as if that person who had lived in a certain way and when they were young, their dad had taught him something, and how he practiced that when he was at a certain age and somewhere else, and suddenly he had that ability. We create the sense of new in the sense that our intelligence is present in many layers. So it's as if where you are finding the room in which your imagination is floating or moving around is actually how aware you are of the lines found within your conception point. And so this is not really something to talk about, but to simply say that your intuition, that feeling, that is your knowing, that is making you move forward, is you, and also everything else in that reality. The projection, it's very important as a point of consciousness and as an advanced communicator, which the time has come now for us to be, no longer stressed, depressed. What kind of use of technology is that? We should not be stressed. We should get rid of stress because we're able designers. Man's mind has always had an ability to enhance his survival. So a part of us is here to maintain your system. You need to eat, for example, to live. So it's very important that you realize some parts of your reality are just how the design is. You need to survive. However, in your awareness, you get more choices, not in the sense that suddenly you can become immortal, I can live, I could be Superman. No, in the sense that the supernatural is actually always present in the natural from before. All those people who thought they had extrasensory perception, no, it's all present. Because non-existence cannot be a reality for the existent mind. unless transparency introduced. And so it's as if like you're not agreeing that you're a good guy or a bad guy, you know, but you're simply seeing that you're just a being that's present. And so it's very important for us to have an ability to get rid of some of our own definitions on ourselves, on ourselves. You know, it's very important that, you know, you might go through a traumatic moment and sometimes you might not know how to handle it. Imagine it's like, you know how weird it would be if someone screams suddenly, for example? You know, let's say we're in a library and somebody just gets a panic attack and screams, you know. And so it'll overwhelm you, it'll shock you, but at the same time, it makes you understand that the same is like what's happening when people are saying, I'm depressed, I'm stressed. A part of their system in its unconscious spiral is not being aware of itself. You will heal your sense of self by being aware of your presence, not trying to work with personality, which is a hollow relationship. What that means is that, okay, let's assume you didn't give me your name, right? I don't know what your name is. So imagine I create my own name for you, and whenever you try to tell me your name, I say, no, that's not your name. Your name is Bob, you know, and imagine your name's not Bob, you know? So it's as if like the problem is not from me, and the problem is not from you. A lot of your confusions are not your reality. For example, if you go up to a kid and tell him, what is God? You know, the kid hasn't even heard the concept of God to even think about it that way, but he is an experience of life. You know, and so we must realize before we judge each other's ideas, we can never judge the existence that we all are. So at some point I understand, regardless of how much my ideas are brighter, everything that I'm seeing is part of my reality. And because my existential responsibility is one that is aware of the very Taoist flow, for example, action through inaction, I'm seeing that by giving myself an ability to observe what is there, I get rid of ideas of my own self that are not serving me. And sometimes your intuition is the fact that you could use a better pencil than the one that's all, you know, crooked and unsharpened. You know, that's simply it. You just know that you can do something and you receive it as a story for you. It's because you still want to be fed that way. It's like you haven't had that moment in your life where you're like, okay, others have been supporting me, now I want to support this existence. I want to give something in this lifetime that's going to be my life's work. That means when my kid in the future checks out who I was, he'll be like, oh man, he had some ideas, I can't stand still, you know? Do you know what I mean? It's very important that you realize your objective here is not just an experience of objectivity, you know? You're not just here to, in a sense, just see some relationships, accept a certain range of relationships, and continuously repeat those until you pass away. No, the moment you're alive, your search has begun. You have explored, and in a sense, you have come into a sense of knowing to constantly be challenged by the unknown. And so you really require that humility of saying, you don't know some things. Because that don't know suddenly activates a greater potential within you. A greater potential that is willing to accept a greater ability. Sometimes you will see that, oh God, I'm such a good person. For example, people get this kind of like, imagine like you're in the thoughts of some guy, you know, and this person is like, oh man, I'm such a good person. Why does this keep happening to me? And so you would see that if we were all just, let's say, the clouds trying to, for a second, take the therapist's place, we would see that we cannot explain solidity to a being who's completely putting his attention on solidity. So what that means is, regardless of whether Leonardo da Vinci, for example, comes back and begins explaining to you his greatest painting or his greatest work, if you're not looking at the object he's explaining to you, you're not going to see what he's saying. You know, so you're going to have that moment in the museum where Da Vinci's constantly trying to tap you on the shoulder, you know. And he's like, hey man, look at the design of my brush, for example. Look at, you know, the Mona Lisa's smile or something, you know. So you would see that if you are not open into receiving a gift, you will never receive one. If every moment life is giving you something and you're pushing it away, of course you're not going to get one. And because you're not being aware of what is pushing it away. You must give yourself the allowance to see that there is no wrong and right in a being whose awareness can be aware of infinite change. You're being aware of change. That's a transcendental quality. The fact that the Buddha for a second realized, oh my God, suffering, is as if before he, later on contemplated what it was, what it inspired him to think that, reality came to, it was as if for a second he saw that there are different intensities in how physicality projects. For example, if you're sitting in a dark room, you move the curtains and it's as if the world has changed, because that light will just come in. So you will see similarly, our psychology is as if we're pulling over the blinds and then thinking we're blind and wondering where our hands are because we're blindfolded. I mean, it's very unnecessary. You got to realize now is a time where your external reality is convincing you too much. It's as if giving you information before you've actually seen what you are, It's as if that moment before you really observed what your existence means to you, you had words and names and shapes and forms for it. You never observed what it means to be just present beyond form. And so many people need to open their minds to the fact that there are different sensitivities in life, but the receiver is important. The receiver is not you, by the way. When I say receiver, it's not as if like Bob is receiving a communication. No. It's that Bob has become aware that before he calls him Bob, he's a moment of life. And so this moment of life is a platform where he has an awareness to things in a way where he can make him abstract. You can just be still and think about things deeply, or in a sense, not think about anything, but become an experience of the view. So what that means is, like, for example, when you're looking at a sunset, sometimes you don't have words, but you're doing something, So imagine just being present without really constantly trying to color your present with your past or with your senses of future. Sometimes you will see in the present moment, you get an idea of what you're going to do in the future, that you're like, gosh, I know what I'm going to do. And you just sit back on the couch and then you realize, gosh, I don't know what to do because I'm sitting on a couch. So it's very important to see that our realities constantly get created by us to break, and that is our growth. In our silence, we're always growing. In our noise, we're always growing. So if you're depressed and stressed, realize that as a moment of existence, you're tuning into the interpretation of sounds, and it's your interpretation. So gosh, your stress is actually no one's, it's no one's responsibility. It's actually your responsibility because you are choosing the values of what a stressful life means. Do you know what that means? That means you ask people what is stress, and they're like, you ask that, let's say 500 years ago, they'd be stressed. They'd be like, we are alive. How can you be stressed? You are living. How could you be stressed? So it's very important to recognize that you are creating something in this reality, and at first it's that moment where you're aware that there's some thought or thinking going on, And so as you're aware, it's as if thought, you can't see it, and suddenly all physicality, every object you're seeing. So it's kind of like our external reality is like a horizontal, let's say, experience, and thought and an awareness of mind and consciousness and all the stuff that's dissolving from formed relationships is in a sense a vertical dimension. So what that means is that now visualize, let's say, a whole square filled with lines, and just, vertical and horizontal lines. Like, let's say, graph paper or something. Now visualize all these lines covering every single space. You see that every moment in this conception of reality, you have an ability to come into an external position, assume, not assume, but in a sense, be an experience of your consideration from a greater platform, and in a sense, suddenly come out. It's very interesting. It's when we get a self-awareness that opens our collective consciousness to the awareness that our individuality is always flowing in the ability to be all information and to be the reception of everything, we suddenly see that our story is the most insignificant thing because it was the blindfold. The fact that we had something to say when people asked us, do you know this? Some sages keep silent, and in that silence they realize, I have nothing to say because I don't know. There's too much unknown factors. However, I am also humble enough to see what I know, and that knowing is not something I'm controlling. So guys, what that means is that this is not, in a sense, I'm not trying to promote a sense of laziness in thought, but I want to suggest that there have been times where suddenly an intense situation has happened for me, and suddenly in my mind it's as if like some generals shouted, "Oh my God, you gotta do this, it's an emergency." So I've wanted to react in some way as if it's been a battlefield or a very aggressive scenario. So when that kind of state or cloud or that mist kind of comes, in that moment there have been times where I stop the whole thing and I stop even the association. So this is not something that I see many people doing, but this is, let's say this is Mr. Within's method of handling intensity of overwhelming experience. In the sense that when you're suddenly hit with overwhelming experience, you cannot handle the situation because your awareness is not capable. It's as if suddenly you're saying, "Oh my God, the person who I thought was so strong, happy, was having fun on Friday, suddenly is broken." It's like as if like you've been pushed to the ground because, let's say, a loved one has passed away. So it's very important to see that life is serious, but in that seriousness, there's also playfulness. And so what I would say is, for now, the human experience should be 60%. Actually, it should be 100% playfulness if you can. But if you can, try to be 60% playful at least. And this is ridiculous, me for giving this percentage, but 40%, let's say, serious. So what that means is that some things in your reality, you need to have an ability to suddenly see if there's an emergency, if there's someone who's dying, suddenly call, for example, for help. You need to have a reality where if there's physical things that are changing, you're not in your bubble of imagination thinking that you're some kind of, being that's not here. It becomes very dangerous if you don't recognize that there requires a certain experiential passage before you suddenly choose to. It's as if like sometimes if you are not experienced, you break a belief, you suddenly, "Oh God, this wasn't true," and then suddenly you grab onto the next thing. It's very important for you to be aware that an experience of simultaneous realities and multidimensionality is not one. It's as if like you're becoming aware of a new way where your intelligence runs, so your habits are no longer the same. And so that method I was pretty much saying was an ability to take a step back into your silence among the loudest noise. Suddenly, let's say an explosion happens or something. And so you will see, if you were suddenly put in a moment where you had to confront yourself alone for all existence, you will see that you will have the ability. And you are it, because in a sense, the mystic knows that stories cannot tell it all. And so even this talk that you're hearing is a story, but it's a story that's trying to break itself. And so it's very important to see and you will see that there's a reason your classroom was never outside. Because regardless of how much you get lost in the relationship of all things that you're going, you always wonder, how am I interpreting the first movement to be certain of the last? And so science, sometimes scientists, I don't want to say science in general, but I've noticed the approach that ideology takes is one where it is receiving some things from it. It's saying like as if, yes, I gotta see it to believe it, but suddenly seeing that if it only considers external reality, it cannot explain certain shifts in how a being in its conscious awareness flows through reality. It's as if it can't explain space and time because we can't see that extra dimension. As if we are in that experience. We are in an experience of space and time. In a sense, you do have a watch and you are physical enough to wash your face, but you will see that your approach changes based on your awareness to what is being approached. And so you will see that if I ask you, what's that in the sky, you'd suddenly be like, "Oh, it's the sun, it's blah, 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 it's this, and you'd go on into the story of just projecting communication that you've heard before. But when I say, "What is that?" sometimes I'm not looking for an answer. Sometimes I'm saying, how could there be certainty in a world with such unknown vastness? It is a very bright moment when a star finds itself having the potential to burst into many more light or simply become an absence. And so a dying star is very profoundly being witnessed by living men on this plane of existence. Be comfortable with yourself. It's very important that you realize you're on a journey and nobody knows where you're going. So there's no advice other than the fact that trust your legs and trust your movement. Be aware of movement through the still. So suddenly if you're going through this journey of life and suddenly overwhelming scenarios come, things are being taken away from you, the worst challenges are come, observe through the stillness. So suddenly if let's say a bunch of people attacked me, I would already be grounded in my stillness, that regardless of whatever physical fluctuation, I would still know where my presence is. But at the same time, the minute you become aware of the stillness, it's as if you have heard the movement before it's coming. You know, it's as if the silence gave you an ability to see clearly. So the stillness gave you an ability to clearly see the movement in your life, which then gave you different understandings of how you are handling the self as a greater self-communication. Remember, humanity comes after, you know, there is a being. So first you exist as a presence, then you exist in the way that you're being observed or can be observed or we can identify. So language, it's as if like we're not in the clearest place. We think this earth is just physical. No, it's not actually. It's as if like the physicality is the horizontal dimension, but suddenly when you really explore the horizontal dimension, it's like all the vertical ones give a potential of also new horizontal ones and, you know, new dimensions of abstraction. So the point is right now, at first you will see when you begin contemplating deeply, when you try to see where the hat of the pilot of consciousness is, and you try to examine your plane of existence, you will see that your ability in life and learning from life is your ability to allow things to be observed. And so guys, what does that mean, allow something to be observed? That means that there is a significance in not touching something and simply seeing there before your movement. See, like every great leader who's given a speech has a moment before the speech where he knows something, but he's like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be unknown, right? And suddenly when he's giving the speech, for example, when Martin Luther is giving the speech, he suddenly sees his knowing is different. It's as if like he didn't even just say, he didn't even need his notes. It's as if his presence just roared out the equality that must have been present in front of mankind. So Martin Luther King's greatest contribution was actually that he made man more kind. Use compassionate, gentle platforms, because it doesn't mean you're going to be gentle. It doesn't mean meditation is the most graceful experience. It simply means that meditation is that point in your life where you're stopping the game, you're stopping the stories, and you're like, all right, I'm not a character, let's see where the storyteller is. And so you begin searching nowhere else other than where you are. It's as if you realize every library is unnecessary. You don't need to go to the library. You don't need to Google. You don't even need a mirror. You need to just close your eyes and breathe, and from that breath, allow your awareness to be present. You see, the breath is a very able technology. If I could do hundreds of talks on breathing, I will. You know, and it's very amazing to see that what is keeping you, which you consider to be a truth, is also very truthfully being kept by you. So you can lie to me, but you can't lie if you see, for example, someone throw a football in the air. You know, if you saw it, you can't lie to yourself. You can always lie to others, because others don't have your eyes, because others are not completely in the same room you find yourself to be in. And that's not a good mentality, because that creates a separation where the person who was a liar was just creating many versions of himself in the minds of many people, rather than just breaking all illusion and being, this is me, this is who I am, that's it. You know, you're not, in life, you need to realize when it comes to presence and the awareness from personality presence, you're not trying to sell anything. You're not a salesman. Because you realize it's a lie. The minute you try to tell someone that you know something, there's the potential of yourself being like, wait a minute, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, you know? So it's that trust and certainty in life which is giving you an ability to move beyond yourself. So, This all comes down to the knowing that my whole life I was seeking for wisdom from the teacher-student dynamic, rather than realizing after the teacher has taught the student and the student has become a teacher, that teacher will begin to see that it never was a teacher and it was an emanation of the teaching. So you begin realizing that your anchors, if you were a great ship of reality, if you were on a ship of this reality, the anchors are in depths that you cannot see. So it's not the point that you should be like, why is my experience only this? You know, it should be that you should be aware that the movement is not an objective experience. Do you understand? The movement of your experience, the flow of your conscious awareness, it's not an objective experience. It's as if like the vertical dimensions are giving you totally new visions of your present moment. It's as if that moment where the poet could see eternity and infinity very close to his palm in that hour, you would suddenly see that contemplation is elusive in nature because the approach is not really you, because you is a changing process, which simply means you think you know yourself. Trust me, you got a lot of living to do. You got a lot of experiences you got to go through. And so life never asks you to sit down and make the greatest plan and figure things out. Mankind chose to figure things out to create comfort. Now his total obsession to figure things out in one manner is not giving them the flexibility of having different aspects of them grow. And what that means is we have been cultivating an ordered society. But at the same time, it's chaotic aspects that have taught us of the order. It's all those villains who've made us realize that the hero was there, but because the hero and villain live on the same street, why are they even there fighting? It's as if it's a mental game. It's as if every story that excited you because you were never in it, but you could be aware of all its changes. It's that moment where some people forget life and watch someone suffer, and it is one of the most disgusting moments in reality, because the same life that is within you is within everything. You will see that person you hit, that person who you gave abuse because you thought at that moment you were the God to bring that wrath down upon him. You were not a God. Your internal reality made you so arrogant that you thought you can change external reality. A wise man does not try to touch things and try to change them. You don't try to rape externality to find an eternal awareness. You become gentle and you allow with your gentle caress all life to open up to you, because then you will see that in your attitude of mind to be compassionate, to take care of life, life will then, through your psychology, lead you to greater expansions of awareness. Whereas if your platform is the platform where the best plane is there. So your plane of existence does not just become the imagery of your satisfaction, but actually becomes a satisfaction that is an awareness. It's suddenly as if like you have suddenly realized you were not an external shape that needed to be a boss. You were the formless knowing that was the movement of all direction. It's as if the moment I felt the wind hit me for the first time in my life, I noticed the greatest leaders of man that inspire man are not only shaped. And so that is when you see people with great ideas being significant, but if they stay on their ideas too long, then they have, in a sense, forgotten about their walk, you know? I'm very glad that we have people like the Eckhart Tolles, the Neil Donald Walsh, the gurus and educators and teachers, and I am grateful for the fact that we have so many different human beings that can study human experience. But regardless of how grateful I am, a part of me says that no human being can just smile 24/7. That life is not just thinking that it's a state where you are complete, but understanding that the movement which is giving you a sense of reference of incompletion is actually how the complete is extending out. So if you were to see yourself as a being, let's visualize it like this. the whole cosmos, everything that ever exists, that intelligence, that spark is the soil, and suddenly out of the soil a human being has come into manifestation. You were suddenly born out of this unknown. So it's as if that moment where the tree is realizing, and where the plant is realizing, okay, there was a point in my experience where I was in the soil, it was very dirty, it was like I couldn't see much, but suddenly now I've come out to a point where I can see, so I'm realizing I was never in the dirt, but at the same time, I'm changing. You see, if man chooses to have hierarchy, he must also have the responsibility of following the sensitivity of his hierarchy. So the minute I choose to entertain ideas and words and to use these, I am suddenly realizing that I am creating a complex where my simplicity is not found because I am choosing to be the complex. It's as if that moment where you didn't have the answer because you were always asking the question. You never went and tried to find an answer. You never applied yourself to life to see in how many ways your greatest work on this plane can be applied. And it's a sign of a aware being to see that regardless of how much he cares about his looks, that the concept of looking is all about vision and sight. And so if you are not enhancing your perception of your own reality, if you're not going into unexplored areas of your mind, if you're not running into those misty mountains with torches in midnight, you will not really give yourself the satisfaction that is direct experience. Give it to yourself, because that's when the classroom is always a new classroom. It's as if you were never stupid, because in some aspect of your own significance, there were some things you saw that nobody else could see. So anytime people judged you, it was an incomplete judgment. You will really see that there's this quote. And this quote, I don't exactly remember who it's by. This quote suggested that you cannot tell someone truth in the sense of making them realize what you have realized. You will suddenly see the way you see that artwork. Sometimes you will never have a way of exactly telling the other person how you see it. And so this has happened throughout the years, where different human beings with different awarenesses engaging with different human beings with different awarenesses have found that you do not touch a process that cannot see beyond itself. You let that process go and you simply become a natural part of the environment in which you are just a very natural emanation. So many people who, let's say, obtain some wisdom on, let's say, the person has had some experiences and he goes on Facebook and he wants to create some kind of presence. You will see that your approach is either you tell people what you have or you do what you have and suddenly see what comes, right? So similarly, in you being an authentic presence in your environment, you will see that you do not try to directly teach others, but be a self-reflection for them, in the sense that you're a mirror. As if that moment when someone asks you, why did you do that? What did you say? Or whatever, you're just silently present and observing. And so the person who, in a very agitated way, let's say, said something as if like, oh God, my life's like this, it's so bad, suddenly realized that in a calmer state of being, that problem does not exist, because the mind does not approach reality in that manner. You're a being with not just vertical and horizontal dimensions, but dimensions beyond your conception that are holding your dimensions. So this is where intelligence is really moving beyond its branches of knowledge to be fruitful in a self-awareness that is letting itself go. It's as if our purpose is not just for our kids. It's not for just humankind in the future. It's that your life right now is for everything. even for senses of being beyond space and time. Because a hamster in a spinning wheel might feel that it's late for work, but the minute it stops, it gets an awareness that reality is not what you thought, and there is your existential allowance. The fact that your classroom is your moment of awareness where you can always be your own clarity. It's as if within you, your internal dimensions become more silent. So when you suddenly become more silent, you become more observant to the imagery of the senses, actually. So you suddenly see that it's like your thoughts are giving your senses new points of potential. Suddenly you see that you can visualize yourself flying in the clouds. You can see that face fading into a limitless sky. You can be yourself, and it's not all that you can do. Life is based on how you observe reality and what expression that observance has. If you see that you're agitated, if you see you're bothered, tired, in fatigue or in stress or some bad situations happen, it's very important for yourself to be very clear for yourself that there's no need for your physical system to be stressed. What that means is that, for example, when I see someone pass away, I don't go kill myself. But I observe it. It's as if internally a part of me has died. A family member has transitioned, you know, and so internally I handle it. So externality there's never a reason for you to be agitated that much. And even when you do get agitated, it just comes to serve the reality that has approached you, and once that reality is gone, you're aware that your moment is not violent. You know? Because you also have an ability, just like how you saw violence, to see peace. In a neutral platform, you are the creator of the world. You choose which path you take, whether it's the one less taken by, or it's the one that everyone's telling you, including everyone you trust and love. Human psychology right now is at a very interesting point, I find. It's as if our world, the way the human being has grown in this world, especially in Western society, is one where, because its individuality has been a technology for its greater awareness, it thinks that individuality will continue to be the reality of the future. And so, no, you will see that as a being, just like how you have an ability to go to different train stations, you can go to different states of awareness to what is existence. And so the self-awareness dissolves in an infinite potential for that self to be manifest. But right now it's very important that before we all go try to explore simultaneous realities, or that concept, or just any form of multidimensionality or higher dimensional communication in quotations, it's very important that we take ourselves first to the platform of nothing, in the sense that we can be present in life and our externality is just as natural as everything else, as our heartbeat, and we're just present, and so internally we are aware. It's as if the mind that was more self-aware recognized that the question and the answer were part of the same coin. And so change, regardless of how much you flip it, is not something to be understood only by an aspect of you. So what that means is if I ask you who are you, and the answers you would give me, if you have any words to say, would be a shape, would be a form, would be a certain range of duality in your observance. And so based on that range of duality, you're saying this is me because this is how I look like, this is what the mirror told me this morning. But you will see that you are an awareness that is keeping that awareness you are certainty in. It's as if your certainty is basking in uncertainty and your uncertainty is basking in certainty. How can you think that you're an individuation when you are the awareness to that individuation? Where you're that moment where you can see how others just like you are creators of their own worlds and are walking beside you. It's as if that person to you beside the bus, if you could only go to their mind, you would see the chaotic movement of stars. Or you would perhaps see the simplicity in the crumbling of a leaf. I hope that this talk has served you and made it very clear that your judgments are your own choices to accept realities that are not real for you. In other words, if I come and call you something and I've never met you, will your mind accept it, or will your mind stand and you will walk in a way where you will tell me, no, you don't know me, right? It's very important to develop this, and I didn't have this for a long point in my life, actually. You know, I think it took me 20 years to realize, oh God, I can move my arms, you know. And what I mean by that is that I did not give myself existential allowance because I did not have the intention to do so. I did not go look and try to find the imageries of my greater freedom, of my greater vision, because I was accepting what was put in front of me. It's like that moment where, you know, you have gone to a restaurant and you have not made the food. And so you're only eating the food without the reality of how it was developed. You're existing in this creation without an awareness of the taste of, like, you know, the peak of your experience and its transcendence. So it's very important to see that you need to cook your own meals. You need to give yourself a moment to see yourself with wings if you've been crawling your whole life. For a long time, I was silent. I thought I was shy. I was all in these paradigms of lack and incapability because I was not applying myself. The minute you stand up for yourself, who's gonna say something? Do you know what I mean? It's as if like your power is only taken away if you accept a story in which where your ability is not real in. So what that means is that if you're, let's say, the greatest ping pong player, let's say, you know, and suddenly I say, this guy, no, he doesn't know how to play ping pong, that's not going to take your power. That moment when you're showing how the ping pong is played, you're like, oh, you know, you will give others greater meaning. And that's when you truly find Mr. Within, where your experience is more real to you than to others. Right now, many of our youth are like, no, my experience is not real. This is real because everyone's saying this is real. You must have a balance. You must have an ability to acknowledge chaos. You must have an ability to acknowledge order. And what that means is that the spiritual seeker sought the chaos of existential change, and the academic sought the order of existential change. And so none of them will be enough if you have not explored enough. What that means is that through this life, in this lifetime, in this period of your existence, if you have not gone through a certain amount of turbulence, life will suddenly put you into that turbulence. It's as if like you suddenly say, oh man, this guy lived his life so well. It's as if like he knew what to do. Why did he suddenly get such a tragic end? No, there is not a tragic ending. It's as if that was part of his, what he came here for, you know? If Earth was a place where collective beings came to cultivate individual realizations, you would see that the greatest lesson of a man who is always feeling as if he's sick or in a disease of, for example, a lack of ease in certainty, a lack of ease in knowing what to do. When you feel sick, could there be any other option than just you seeing that you're not sick? Do you need medicine, or can the human being in an instant projects in its subtler planes of awareness realities of its greater health. Become sensitive to life, and in your own playful approach to discover what you are as a moment of existence, you will introduce a sense of new application. You know, it's like, no, you don't have to just communicate the things you know. You just have to communicate, and everything is present. You know, there's never, even though we use it because we're living in a world where hierarchy is significant when in communication, we are choosing what satisfaction and happiness means because there's a condition. If you're unhealthy, I say the best medicine is become a mystic. Don't be so convinced that you're unhealthy. Go and observe the reality of your existence. Go see if you know yourself, or knowing yourself is a ridiculous idea, and you want to go your whole life in the same hamster wheel. You know? And guys, I don't want to say this too arrogantly, actually. I don't want to say it in a way where I'm imposing anything, but just to communicate that if we do not try new things, we will never find new senses of ourselves doing those things. For 20 years, I thought, not that I thought, but I was not engaging my life with self-awareness. And so this is where some people just completely go into external reality, in the where the guy thinks that because he's tough, he owns everything. Do you know how ridiculous it would be living in a world with 8 billion people who are all trying to be bosses? You know, it's a ridiculous world, you know? It's not real, it's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that the system is going to calm itself. Right now, for us, it's like the apocalypse, but for the earth, it is simply as if it's scratching its back. So your awareness needs to change on the scale of reality that is overwhelming you to a point where you're giving your power to the external reality. It's as if nobody told you, but this plane of existence is not your home. The pilot has a different sense of reality, which is existence. It's only here because this is the flight, because this is the plane, and there are certain passengers that need to, in a sense, remember themselves through more than just the shape of starlight, but the presence of the cosmos. The whole thing. There's actually not a thing, so it's actually nothing. You are not a student of different branches of knowledge or a certain school. You're a student of life. You're a student of all that you know. And that is why you're not a student. You are an awareness to all that you know. And so, as one aspect you're experiencing fluctuation, you will then see that fluctuation has just created space, like getting rid of unnecessary boxes in a room for you to actually feel your presence in that room. You know, in ancient teachings, in ancient Indian teachings, for example, in the Upanishads and certain approaches that they have towards meditation, it's as if they say it, and I don't know, I have not been there, and I haven't been in those dynamics, at least externally in the way that I'm saying it now, but it's as if they were suggesting that you need to consciously build a ladder into greater states of being where there's more an existential allowance. So, you know, it's like if you were that kid who at first saw Superman, it's like, oh, that's cool. How do I become super, you know? And then you went and saw human activity, you would see that all of it is based on a sense of ego and externality, that the fact that you have to be a certain something to then get the check mark that that's a happy life. In actuality, there's nothing that has to be actual, because your intelligence or your awareness to self is not just a physical awareness. It's in a different sense of plane of intelligence. And I'm not kidding. It's as if we've reached the borders of this plane of existence, and so we're realizing, oh my God, the end of the world wasn't outside. It was actually that moment within us where we dissolved into all experience. And of course, I'm saying this very playfully, but the conscious path is a sense that through your practice, through your art of living, you are always aware of the artwork that you are, or the artwork that you're doing. It's that moment where you realize you're not a painter, because everyone has the potential to be a painter, and it's just greater human ability. Do you know? All these professions, all these things that we are measuring, we're just measuring it to evolve ourselves. It's as if we are forgetting that human beings, if you acknowledge yourself too much objectively, you will be seen as information. So then it'd be as if like that moment where Terence McKenna is suggesting that we're intermediaries, and it's as if we're passing our torch to a more objective technology, you know, artificial intelligence or whatnot. But that stuff is not real, in the sense that what is artificial is different based on different senses of conception. So what that means is, if you choose to be too objective, you will see yourself as information, and it'll be as if the information is always being processed. It's as if you're never who you really are, but you're a progression that is making you see some things. So it's very important to see that your own experience is not just using the colors of externality. And so what that means is that your knowing of what you are is in a state of, just as I can say, a moment. It has no interpretation, it's unspeakable. It's the fact that you're in a moment of existence. It's like your bubble of presence without you really seeing that it's a bubble. And so this bubble can at times burst if life gets too intense for you, and suddenly in that burst you become aware of, wow, I always had a potential of being a bubble if I was just, you know, if my focus was in that manner. Where how I was blown into manifestation was done in a sense that I knew that wasn't me, because it was an extension of me. It's as if this presence of me right now is an emanation. And so similar to how my words are an emanation from the spark that is my mouth opening to talk. Do you see that relationship? So it's very important to see that multidimensionality is our own exploration of self, and our own introduction to our sense of formless presence, and an intelligence that right now I'm calling it simultaneous realities or multidimensional reality. But the reason I'm saying it is right now we don't have even some technologies to be that accurate into moving through it. So our technology right now is perhaps maybe like 200 years, I think, behind in what it can actually be in regards to taking us to a more transcendental quality. It's as if it's as if when I saw technology, I'm like, wait a minute, the technology is evolving, but the self-awareness of the users are not evolving. So it's like, even though I have Google, but in the long run, it's as if this phone in my pocket is telling me that I need to, it's like as if it'll get to a point where I have to Google a tree before I can actually, I'll be interested in a tree. You know, that's ridiculous. It's life. Put an object away that's projecting a reality that is not your actuality, and simply just go and, in a sense, walk. If you don't know what to do, that's a very graceful state. That's a state where your greatest ideas come. When you don't know is where you observe your knowing. And so don't create stories of you being a certain person where every day, every moment, you're becoming something else. If I told you, are you your 5-year-old self? No, but you have a capacity to act like one, let's say. You know? But you're not doing it because you are in awareness of your individuality without wanting to touch it. So for example, if I tell you, remember a time when you smiled, are you planning? Are you sitting down, brainstorming, trying to create an outline of how that thought suddenly came into your awareness? No. It's as if one part of our recollection is a natural manifestation that is in an instant. So when a self-aware being has an awareness to an instant moment, cause and effect do not have form. It's as if like that moment in the whole horizontal dimension of life, you suddenly notice you were vertical, so you were all potentials of being a vertical line in that horizontal dimension. So it's like you get your compassion if you take the path of devotion and the path of just being absorbed in the love of life, which is the healthiest and actually one of the most not quickest actually, because there's no destination, but it's just like, it's one of the most healthiest and efficient paths, the path of devotion. The path that is not just using too much rationality, you know. But if you do choose a path where you want ideas to first calm you, then it's very important to see that you must break some ideas Not in the sense that you're trying to find something, but trying to sense that you are updating your understanding of your understanding. Just like iTunes updates that happen very often. Too often, I see. So be aware, and through your intention as a clear being, simply see clearly by knowing that you are clear, that you are found to be present. Existence cannot be judged. It exists beyond our interpretation. It's there, it's what's giving our interpretation. So the foundations of existence are not things that you find as a temporal entity, but you dissolve into that knowing. And you know yourself. So don't act like you don't. You've seen yourself be a saint, a sinner, and you've also seen yourself be who you are now, and you will also see yourself to be who you will be, which will be one of the greatest contributions to this plane of existence, and just an efficient life. It's as if Nikola Tesla's ghost could have appeared and heard the president say that he was the most useful human being. He'd be like, all right, I did some things right. There's always a way, for you are the way. Much blessings.